Hello everyone. There's been breaking news in the last few hours. I don't know exactly when it happened, but breaking news that the actor Philip Seymour Hoffman has been found dead in his Manhattan apartment. He was 46. Um, he was an Oscar-winning actor, very highly acclaimed actor. Um, he was very prolific. He starred in many roles, often secondary roles, but he won a lot of acclaim for his role in the film Capote 2005. So clearly a very talented man. Um, what I'd like to speak about in this video is sort of divide it into two parts, and it is concerning his supposed cause of death, which is drugs. Now, first of all, as I say, the general view is that Philip Seymour Hoffman was a very talented actor. It is, of course, sad news when someone who has contributed so much to art and culture passes away in this sort of way. And my heart goes out to his family and friends and so on. 46 is obviously too young to die. It's sad news. But you know, this is something of a celebrity cliche, dying from drugs. And I want to weigh in a bit on what I think of this. Firstly, I didn't know the man, so I'm really in no position to speak about his character. I can't say he was a great guy because I didn't know him. I've no reason to believe that he wasn't. But so I can't judge his own character. And I should say the supposed cause of death being drugs. That is, this is initial reports. This is literally breaking news within the last few hours. So we shouldn't absolutely see that as a concrete fact. But if it does turn out to be drugs, that's it's very sad. Someone pointed out that the real side. Well, actually, what I was going to say is there's a lot of mixed responses. There's the predictable sort of very oh, rest in peace, I feel for his family, etc., very sympathetic comments. I wonder, are they a little bit hypocritical or at least disingenuous? I can't say that for a fact. Maybe those people really are sad about it, but it does seem that a lot of people jump on the bandwagon when a celebrity passes away in this sort of way, and almost cry crocodile tears when I don't know, they might be Philip Seymour Hoffman fans. But I think more honest sort of comments are those that are somewhere in the middle. People who acknowledge that it's a sad story, but you know, I do think it's a bit disingenuous when people sort of act like they know the man personally. I don't, so do I feel very sad? Not particularly, but I recognise it's a sad situation. People have pointed out that all over the world today, millions of people are suffering. Thousands of people will die. That are a lot more anonymous than Mr. Hoffman. And when I see comments like, every death is sad, etc., I'm thinking, well, yeah, but you don't mourn every death in quite the same way. What I'm saying is, I have no problem with people expressing sadness about the man's death. It is a sad situation, but the drugs factor is something I'd like to talk a bit about. One thing that annoys me is when people make excuses for it. They'll say things like, "Oh, you don't know what was going on in his personal life. I see comments like, "Try being an addict, try struggling with addiction," and so on. Now, first of all, I've never been a drug addict, so I can't know firsthand what it's like. That is, if Mr. Hoffman indeed was. We have to be very careful about jumping to conclusions here. But I'm using it as an introduction to the video. The video applies to the wider issues anyway. Um, should I feel sorry for addicts? My sympathy is somewhat muted, and I'll try and explain this. I'm not as cold-hearted as those people who say drug addicts get what they deserve, they're sinners, etc. The sort of very moralizing, patronizing sort of attitude some people take, where they really, really judge these people and vilify them. I'm not one of those people. I don't believe that drug addicts are evil people. I don't think they're necessarily bad people. Um, but I do take issue with them being portrayed as victims in the same way as people who, for example, are suffering from a terminal illness that hasn't been of their own making. The health impacts brought about by drugs are entirely the responsibility of the person who has chosen to take the drugs. That's just a fact. You can't gloss it over. And I do think if someone voluntarily, obviously this doesn't apply to cases where people are spiked, but if someone voluntarily chooses to take a dangerous substance, and they know that substance is controversial, they know health professionals say it's controversial, and they know it's illegal, I think then that is something that is entirely their own responsibility, and there should be some blame attributed to them. I don't accept that drug users are victims in the same way that, for example, people who are victims of persecution are victims, or victims of violent crime are victims, or victims of some painful terminal illness are victims. It's not the same. Why? Because in all the other cases, it's a case of someone being persecuted by an outside force. In the case of drug users, that's something that they have chosen to do. Now, so far as am I sympathetic to them, I'd have to be a pretty cold bastard not to have some sympathy, because you could tell these people, if someone is struggling with addiction, I can't imagine the hellish experience that must be. You just have to look at a film like Basketball Diaries to get a glimpse, and no drug film can ever really show an insight, especially when we think about hallucinogenic drugs. Drug addiction is a disease, but it is a disease that's been brought on by the choice to take drugs. That's irrefutable. Now, people will say, well, you don't know what's happened in their private life to make them make that decision. True, I don't. And it could be that they have resorted to drugs as a way of coping with something in their life. Now, it could be in the case of celebrities, it's a way of coping with the pressures of fame. I believe the boxer Joe Calzaghe took drugs for that reason. And there's other examples. So that's one explanation. But if we use that as an excuse, then anyone who's ever suffered severe depression or suicidal tendencies could also use it as an excuse. Now, I've suffered severe depression. I've had suicidal tendencies. Would I have a reason to then decide to start taking drugs as a way to escape from that? It's just something I'm throwing out there. I don't believe we should vilify these people and say that they're terrible people, but at the same time, I just can't accept that they are victims in the same way as people who haven't been responsible for their own suffering. And in the end of the day, whatever way you gloss it over, drug users have made that fundamental choice to take drugs in the first place. And that is not only phenomenally stupid, it's something that's... you see, the problem I have with this is if you equate drug addiction to other forms of suffering, then you're taking away the responsibility factor. And that's wrong, I think. Now, I don't know Philip Seymour Hoffman personally, and I really, really don't want people to think I'm being callous. The man may have been suffering, he may have been going through we don't know. I don't know him personally, we don't know what he was going through to have made that choice to take drugs. But this is yet another reminder of how evil drugs are. And I'm not pure. I've drank before, I've smoked. I'm not whiter than white. But I do draw the red line with substance abuse. I think it's just a very slippery path to destruction, and no one can claim ignorance. No one can say, oh, they didn't realise the harm that was being done. There's the amount of advertising that's spent on trying to put people off drugs, and the number of health professionals, legislators, you name it, that tries to send out a message that drugs are going to hurt you. I don't think anyone can really claim ignorance. So Philip Seymour Hoffman was a grown man. He must have known that this substance abuse would have hurt him. And then, unfortunately, he obviously got into a situation where he developed that addiction. But he wouldn't have developed the addiction if he hadn't made the choice to take the drugs in the first place. And the point is, drugs are illegal. So when someone takes drugs, they're already breaking a crime. That already, in my eyes, takes away the victimhood from them. When you choose to break a crime, when you choose to break the law, you're not an innocent victim. I'm sorry, but that just goes without saying. If you voluntarily break that sort of law, this isn't a law about free speech, this isn't a law that's something ridiculous like a blasphemy law. This is a law which is common sense in most people's book. Well, some would say legalise all drugs, but whatever the case, no one can honestly say that drugs are good. That's just irrational thinking. The only people that would say that, really, I'm talking about recreational drugs here. I'm not talking about drugs to ease pain for medicinal purposes, but the only people who would say recreational drugs are good are people who use them because they're feeling good at the time, and they are not in a position to reflect on the long-term effects. I don't care what anyone says, substance abuse is not good. So why am I saying all of this? I'm saying it because I'm a little bit tired of people ignoring these facts about drugs, the fact that people choose to take them. If you're irresponsible with something that's a drug, or with alcohol, or with any sort of substance, then ultimately it is your responsibility to sort that out. I don't think people should be stone cold. I think drug addicts deserve help. Of course they do. But the victimhood mantle is something I find hard to accept, because there's people in the world who are suffering through no fault of their own, through no choice of their own. You cannot possibly compare those sort of situations. You just can't. Now, Philip Seymour Hoffman chose to break the law. He chose to, unless of course it's medicinal drugs, I don't know, but I'm presuming if he's been using cocaine or whatever, I don't know what it is, and I shouldn't jump to conclusions, but it just irks me off a bit when people make excuses for deliberate drug use when people in the world are suffering through no fault of their own. Now, no one's perfect, people make mistakes, and for that reason I think drug addicts do deserve sympathy and help, but I don't think it's right to say that they're innocent victims. And it does irritate me when addicts then blame everyone else but themselves for the problems. And I've seen certain addicts do this, like, oh, try going through what I'm going through. Well, I'm sorry, but you have taken that choice. You're not the only one who's suffered. Other people may have went through a traumatic experience. They may have gone through a terrible time, but they haven't chosen this method to get through it. This is the point, it's a choice. So I'm really not trying to be cold in this video. I'm just trying to state my view that you cannot make drug usage, you cannot claim that's victimhood in the same way as other situations. You just can't. Um, so that's my thoughts on the issue. Thanks for watching.